Live, welcome everyone. It's Wednesday the 28th. Pretty important day if you ask us. It's Hot Takes Live 3, ready to rock and roll. We are going to give a few additional seconds, like 15, 20 seconds more for people to start trickling in, and then we're gonna kick it off. But in the meantime, we are very excited to have you here. Also, before getting started, a couple housekeeping items. First and foremost, a little bit about us. What is Breadcrumbs? Breadcrumbs is enterprise-grade scoring for everyone. It's designed for operators instead of data scientists, and it's optimized for speed, observability, and flexibility. Also, as of last month, we released our biggest innovation yet. It's called Breadcrumbs Co-Pilot. You can use our AI-assisted tool to create your scoring model in seconds, not days, not weeks, not months, seconds. And you stay in control by editing your scoring model at any time. Plus, you get rich analytics on each aspect of your scoring model performance. Even better, you can try it for free at the following link, breadcrumbs.io/copilot. Or if you're curious and want to have a chat about it, just drop me a note at armando@breadcrumbs.io. More than happy to have a chat, more than happy to show you around a little bit. So what is Hot Takes Live? It's the third edition, so everything comes in three. We have 30 incredible speakers for you today across 3 tracks. And it's a very simple idea. It's counterintuitive insights, surprising data points, thought-provoking point of views at the intersection of growth, revenue, and ops, all in up to 10-minute sessions, not more than that, plus 5 minutes Q&A. That's the reason why it has been dubbed as the TED for B2B tech. So very excited to get started. We have really a full agenda for you today. We were mentioning 3 tracks/stages. One's going to be the marketing stage. One's going to be the sales and product stage. One's going to be the ops stage. And I'm going to stay on this slide for, a few dozens, a couple dozens of seconds just to get you situated and orientated across what's going on. It's a lot, as you can see. So the general lay of the land, we are going to go through 5 sessions per track, and then take a break around noon Eastern, just so that you can take a breath at us as well, and then resume the day. Also, you can notice that the sessions are staggered a little bit between each other. So there is always something going on. There is always something for you to attend and listen in. If your session ends and you're curious about jumping on the next one and might be a different track/stage, now you can do that very, very easily. Also, this agenda is on the event homepage in case you don't have it handy, but it's going to be available for you throughout the day. So you can check it out over there, hottakeslive.com, or it's going to be as a resource here on OPIN. So switching gears to the afternoon, the 3 stages continue through a second series of sessions. Another thing to call out, meanwhile you skim through the titles and decide what's interesting and compelling to you if you didn't do that already, is the fact that you can see the speakers are really go-to-market senior leaders that are doing it right now. You can see C-level speakers, VP-level speakers, as well as director and senior director level speakers, all in a go-to-market function, either marketing, either sales, either product, either ops. So this is really a great opportunity for you to take a peek into their brain and listen in on the things that they care about right now, the things that they're working on as we speak. and also have, a little bit of a view on how some of the companies that you know and love, you can see very well-known names over there, as well as up and upcoming companies are thinking about their go-to-market engines as we speak. And then we're going to wrap it up around 2:10 Eastern. So we're going to try to be on time as much as possible, but it's a lot. So let's see where we land. All right. Also, before getting started, the last thing that I should mention is that, in case you didn't see that already, we do have a free ticket to HubSpot Inbound 2023 conference for you. So you will find the way to enter the sweepstakes in the chat. But FYI, the winner will be announced on our social channels tomorrow, June the 29th. All right, all good? Ready, set, go. Let's get started with the first hot take slide, which is my own. And here it is. Averages are a lazy AF way of measuring. Enough with that. A little bit about me before jumping into the meat of my hot take. I'm, of course, the co-founder and CEO of Breadcrumbs. I've been a 3 times entrepreneur at this point, as well as a 2-time senior leader. Plus, I'm an angel investor in about 300 plus companies at this point. My LinkedIn profile is slightly out of date. I should actually refresh that. And, one of the things that I find thinking over and over again is the fact that most operators unconsciously default to averages when looking at metrics and KPIs. Case in point, have you ever heard or said the following? Our trial to paid conversion is 2%. Our average contract value is 4K. Our email open and reply rate is 41% and 3% respectively. Now, that's an okay-ish start, but be aware that you're doing a disservice to yourself and your company by not going one level down. In fact, I want to show you 2 examples of what that means from a practical perspective to further contextualize and solidify this idea. Example number 1, this is an analysis that Gary, my co-founder, did. We're going to have him over the Q&A to double click on this further. But this is an analysis that was done for Hootsuite back in the days. And you can see that blue line at the bottom of the chart. That's the average conversion rate of 2% that I was mentioning. You can also see that if you cohort different clusters based on their different behavior, way more compelling and interesting narrative emerges. In fact, you can see a highest cohort that's kind of the cream of the crop, right? 3% of the entire population that's performing incredibly well, 7.2x almost on the average. And then there is a higher cohort, which represents about 24% of the population that's still performing really well, 2.7 plus x on the average. And then you have kind of a medium-ish and very, very low-performing cohort that represents, in aggregate, 73% of the population and is underperforming by a little bit or a lot, right? 0.9x down to 0.1x on the average. Again, one thing is the average. The other thing is what are the cohorts? What are the different behaviors / makeups that are contributing to that average point? So question to you, isn't this a way more informative, educated way of having that conversation? And a better way to focus on, the things that move the needle, right? Second example, this is an analysis that I did for a portfolio company of mine. I was helping the CEO with the newly launched, more like somehow newly launched commercial motion, right? We're looking at about 300 commercial customers, and you can see that the ACV, the average annual contract value for those was 4K. Now, for the ones of you that do know benchmarks with regards to ACV for commercial, that's barely okay, but not really. Like ideally, you would want to see a 5K as a floor for commercial, up to 15K, maybe 20K, maybe even 25K for your commercial customers. And so at the first glance, not great, right? But then if you double click on different cohorts, you can see that, the cohort under 5K represents about 78% of the population and has an ACV of 2.9K. Also, if you look at the 5 to 15K cohort, that's just under 20% of the population. And interestingly enough, ACV goes up to 6.5K. So it's now above that 5K threshold that we were mentioning. Finally, there is also a 15K plus cohorts that, again, cream of the crop, just under 2%, that has a dramatically higher ACV, right? Up to 3x the previous cohort at 22.6K. And so really pushing through the high end of that benchmark that I was mentioning. And so again, question to you, isn't this a better, more informative, as well as informed way of having a conversation? Which leads me to my recommendation, right? Or my series of recommendations. Number one, always ask or get a cohorted breakdown of the key relevant data sets that you're looking at. You don't have to do this for every data point all the time, but when it matters, be aware that, double clicking on some of them actually helps quite a bit. Number two, expect to see a power law distribution following the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule, right? The 20% of the input will generate 80% of the output. There is always that relationship. Also, trade-offs to parse through the data are going to be required. So expect to have to go through that exercise as a team. Number three, data tells a story, but breakdowns tell a better story by putting into focus what really moves the needle, right? Way easier, way better to focus on the stuff that really matters and have decisions and strategies around like that slice of your population that really moves the needle and impact your revenue and growth objectives. Key takeaway, if you ask me, this is the one soundbite. This is the tweetable quote, right? Data-driven decisions. Every one of us constantly talks about them. We are a data-driven company. I'm a data-driven operator. We take data-driven decisions. Yes, but data-driven decisions based on average data, we only get you average results. And we can do better than that, right? That's it on my end. That's my hot take for today to kick the day off. Now, Gary, if you don't mind jumping in for Q&A so that we can unpack some of the things that we were touching on.
Yeah, happy to. Hi, Armando. Great job. We have a few questions already in the chat, but I'll start with one of my own, and then we'll jump into some of those. I guess for everybody listening, from a kind of practical perspective, in terms of how it impacts your operations, how it impacts your revenue, why the cohorted view? Obviously, it tells you more granularly, but how can it impact your business?
Yeah, the one thing that I tend to think about is that as you get that deeper level of understanding on what's contributing to the overarching number, you essentially are applying a decision framework, right? You say, hey, like there is going to be a different makeup for each and every one of those cohorts. And so tracking those independently, but still in aggregated way, will give you a more informed point of view. And so instead of saying, hey, we need to improve our T2P conversion from 2% to 3%, now let's talk about what are we doing for that high-performing cohort and how does that high-performing cohort looks like, or like going back to the example of ACV, right? One thing is looking at ACV on average, and that will include an aggregate makeup of all those 300 commercial customers. But the reality is that some of them are not like the others, right? And so focusing on like having a tear down breakdown of that will drive you to a deeper level of understanding, and as a consequence, different type of actions around it.
Yeah. I think you hit on one of the key words that I think of. I think of focus, and I think of sacrifice, right? Like the average, I think, is a great bellwether directionally telling you where things are going. But if you're going to make operational decisions, i.e., I want to increase my ACV,
right?
Well, perhaps the secret there is actually focusing on that segment that has the higher contract value, and deprioritizing the activities to that long tail of lower paying customers, right? If I'm thinking about increasing my open rate or my click-through rate on an email program, well, maybe it's not about tweaking call to actions, or maybe it's about wholesale, like eliminating an underperforming program as opposed to small marginal changes, right?
I think it always comes down to trade-offs, right? Like when you talk about focus, like the implied part of the conversation, which I think having breakdowns helps surface, is the fact that we are always constantly operating in a world of limited resources, limited time, limited headcount, limited focus, and so you constantly need to make trade-offs. And so being able to have a better decision framework to your point, focus on the stuff that matters versus deprioritizing the stuff that doesn't too much or doesn't serve your overarching objective. It's a better way of operating, if you ask me.
For sure. Cool. Let's go to the audience. So Vincenzo asks, can you further segment the ACV cohorts, i.e. SMB, mid-market, enterprise? And as an extension to that question, can you generalize the ROI for each segmented cohort relative to investment in CAC?
Yes, absolutely. And you should. You absolutely should. One recommendation there, like I usually go by the rule of three, right? Like 3 or 4 cohorts is good enough. Like some companies might go overboard and start to be overly granular. I don't necessarily think that being overly granular helps either, because that increases the amount of work and time that you need to get that visibility, and doesn't necessarily improve too much the following conversation, right? Having 5 or 10 or 15 cohorts instead of 3, sure, but how are we helping the conversation? Are we moving?
Yeah, and I think it's totally kind of like you develop your own framework for it. I'm a big fan of quintiles, right? Using quintiles gets you rapidly to the Pareto principle, right? Because it's groups of 20%, right? So I think you can go overboard in the analysis, but as long as you think of a framework that works for you and you use that repeatedly, I think this becomes like kind of second nature. Okay, cool. So Christine asks, why not just take the median?
That's a really good question. And hey, Christine, you guys will see her later on as a speaker as well. I think so. The median is, again, directionally useful, but you're sacrificing the edges. And edges are, in some cases, relevant because they are not, aberration to your focus, but point to what the future could look like. And so having a way to represent edges in parallel to like the median area, I think it's actually really relevant for comprehensive conversations.
Yeah. Listen, I think the medium is great. It's a great shortcut to like buffer out the outliers, right? It's a great way to get the noise of the extremes out of the conversation. And it's actually a good way to set a target for your average, in my opinion. But But yeah, I think the granularity of these cohorted views are the ones that really drive to operational decisions, this idea of focus and sacrifice, right? Awesome. Armando, we're at time. And so excited to get all of our speakers up and running.
Yes, let's do that.
For everyone watching, we will be kicking off in about a minute here on the main stage with Tim Kilroy. All the other stages will be starting very shortly. Grab yourself a coffee, grab yourself a water, and buckle in for a bunch of spicy hot takes.
Let's do it. Thank you, Gary.